With over 25 years in media across TV, radio, press, digital, and agency, he's now the resident advertising trainer at 7 West Media. John Dawson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'd like to meet this guy.
So you've spent 25 years across every corner of media, TV, radio, digital press, and agency. What's the through line that kept you inspired in this space?
I always find that the people in media are often really genuine and just really great people. And plus, it's exciting.
You've walked through your cancer journey. What are some of the unexpected gifts it gave, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually?
I always say grow through what you go through, that there's always lessons and there's always gifts in everything that you go through, which is a really important thing in your life.
Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding and life from the Horizon Digital podcast recording studio here in Perth. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer, the founder of Design Studio Perth. And to celebrate the launch of season 2 of the show, Design Studio Perth is offering all our listeners a free brand discovery. So if you're an elite operator and are looking to level up your brand, use the link in the show notes below to book in a time to have a chat. Now, the Real Biz Life Chronicles is on a mission to become one of Australia's leading business podcasts, but in order to do that, we please need your help. If you do enjoy this episode, we please ask that you like and subscribe to our channels below, or simply share this episode with a fellow human that you love and is perhaps going through a bit of a dip and needs some inspiration. You think you know what strength looks like. Maybe it's loud, dominant, unshakable, but sometimes it's kind, inspiring, effervescent. Sometimes strength is the quiet ability to see the best in people and help them see it in themselves. Sometimes it's the guy who lifts the whole room by just walking in. I first saw this man speak at an event and I will never forget it. He didn't perform, he connected. He showed up with raw honesty and vulnerability that moved the entire room, including me. And I truly believe his story has something to teach all of us, especially the special men in our lives. He's played over 60 sports, shared stages with music legends, once nailed Never Tear Us Apart at karaoke, and if you were in the room, you'd swear he was singing the song just for you. With over 25 years in media across TV, radio, press, digital, and agency, he's now the resident advertising trainer at 7 West Media, where he brings his wisdom, wit, and big-hearted leadership to the next generation. But he'll never tell you about the times he went into bat for someone behind closed doors. He won't mention the coaching, the care, the wisdom he gave without ever asking for credit, because that's not why he does it. He leads with compassion, he moves with purpose, and he empowers everyone around him to shine. John Dawson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'd like to meet this guy.
Well, I have met him, he's a legend.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for making time to chat with us today. Like I say, when I saw you present, I was so moved by your vulnerability. And, I know this word gets thrown around a lot, authenticity, but that's truly what you were at that moment.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. And I was really honoured and to actually go to that event. A friend asked if I'd come and chat about the journey that I'd been through and going on. And as I have said to you before, often I find that real power and real strength comes through vulnerability.
Yeah.
And like you said, being authentic and true to yourself.
Yes. And another thing, I know you didn't know me from a bar of soap, so thank you so much for being keen to come on the podcast as well.
No, it was so nice. I remember you just walked up to me and said, "Oh, thank you so much. That was so inspiring." I was like, "Oh, no, thank you." And then you said, "Oh, I've got this podcast if you'd like to come on." And I thought, and I always love to try, anything new or different and to get out of my comfort zone because, that's where real growth happens.
Completely. I can definitely attest to that, 100%. John, you've worn many hats, musician, athlete, media leader, but if someone asked who is John Dawson beneath all of it, what would you answer?
Oh, at the heart of it, I would say I'm a father. And that's definitely one of my greatest challenges, my greatest love. I often say that, I have 3 daughters and that I've been being punished, but to be honest, I'm actually very blessed. They're truly amazing. But yeah, that's a really difficult question. I find it really difficult to actually talk about myself and big myself up. I've actually never been. It's strange. Lots of people will say, "Oh my God, you're so confident, so confident." I'm actually not very confident at all. And I often find that a lot of the people that you see or you think are really confident, deep down underneath, it's like a facade that they're trying to hide.
We've all been there.
I had a friend that was actually quite a huge model in Perth, and he was one of the kind of top barmans at one of the top nightclubs, and he'd be dancing on the bar, and girls would be all around him and throwing themselves at him. And yet, when you really got to know him, he had no confidence at all. But I try to be someone that cares. I find that I try to be someone that's kind and. I generally just I love people. A friend of mine said to me a long time ago, he said, I find it so interesting. He goes, people give you energy. He said, people drain me and I don't get tired. He said, but they just spark you. And I really feel that. I love being around people, and I love helping as much as I can wherever I can.
Yeah. And I think that same energy that that they give you, I think you give that to others as well. Like I say, from seeing you speak and just seeing you being so genuine, it was really moving.
Thank you.
Speaking of fatherhood, you once said the bravest thing anyone can do is have kids. What has fatherhood taught you that nothing else in life has?
I've always been pretty patient, but it definitely teaches you even more patience. I found one of the greatest gifts that with kids, I found you think you love your partner.
Yeah.
But you don't, not compared to your kids. And, I always give that example of they can keep you up all night, and they can cry, and they can wee on you and dribble on you. And you go there in the morning and they give you this big smile and you pick them up and you're like, oh, I love you.
Yeah, just unconditional.
But if your partner keeps you up all night, does that, you look at them and they smile at you in the morning, you're like, don't you fucking smile at me. I've had enough of you. And it's just so wild. And I think one of the most amazing things for me when I had kids was that I didn't realize how much you could love something and then the next day love it more.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I only have fur babies and I love them a lot. So I'll take your word for it.
Very special.
John, I'd love to speak about your career. So you've spent 25 years across every corner of media, TV, radio, digital press and agency. What's the through line that kept you inspired in this space?
Yeah, I've always been attracted to media. I've worked for 4 record companies, 3 TV networks, 2 radio stations, 2 social and digital agencies, 2 advertising agencies, street press.
Heaps of experience, yeah.
And I'd say part of the common thread is people. I always find that the people in media are often really genuine and just really great people. And plus it's exciting.
Yeah, it would be.
It's always something different. Every day is something different. You're always constantly learning, and you're learning about other people and the psychology of how things work.
Yeah, fascinating.
And so, and it's something that I've always been interested in. I have a degree in psychology, and I love the way people think or how they think or why they think that. And often I find it really interesting if somebody's got a completely different opinion to me, just to sit there and go, wow, why do they think that?
Totally.
And then try to understand from their perspective, because often they can change my perspective. I don't believe that everything I know is correct and right. And if you can convince me or show me that it's wrong, and I want to learn that and I want to be correct. So, and I will always try and, I'm very big on questions, and I constantly question. And it's not to annoy somebody, or it's to actually make sure that your theory holds water. And if it does, then I'm taking that on board.
I do the same. I think my favorite word is why. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why? And I think I do drive people nuts, but it's just, it's that interested inside of what that person's perspective is, or, what kind of led them to believe that as well.
Yeah. I remember when at school, I had a maths teacher and he would explain something and then he would look at me and say, John? And I just asked more questions.
So you knew they were coming.
He knew they were coming, but they're always coming.
Yeah. And John, what has been the most exciting project you've worked on?
I would honestly say what I'm doing now at Seven West Media, I feel very blessed and very honoured to do what I do. And, my title is advertising trainer.
Yes.
But I often tell people that really I'm a storyteller, and through those stories I mentor and I coach and I train and I try to inspire people to be the best that they can be. And it's such an honour, to work with somebody and see them grow and see them learn something, and it's so rewarding. And I completely understand why teachers often love to teach and they love what they do because, like I said, it's incredibly rewarding.
Had you always seen yourself becoming a teacher in some way?
No, although there was a couple of times where I thought, I thought the idea of teaching, and then when you've got your own kids and you think, oh my God, I've got 30 of them to look after, and like breaking your own kid is bad, but breaking other people's kids, it's not good.
No. So do you work with like the junior, marketers as such, or
it's a combination, mainly the sales guys.
Oh, right.
And so, like I said, my job's because I've generally gone through most challenges or most problems that have come in media.
Sure.
And so I use that experience and that knowledge and the wisdom from that sort of stuff to help them navigate through the challenges that they might have. I do a lot of presentations, so I'll do presentations on objection handling, time management, client discovery, cold calling, and because I'm very big on sales is about giving.
Yes,
people often think that
standpoint.
It's about taking, and it totally isn't. I believe that the more you give, the more you get, and one of the things that I often talk to with the guys that I work with is that if you are only phoning your client when you want something, there's often they're not going to pick up that call.
True.
And that, you should be finding ways to help that business grow, to give them information. And we're so lucky at the West Australian and Seven West Media that, every day there's articles in the paper that can help there's knowledge that can help another industry, whatever the category they're in, understand what's going on in the market and to help them grow. I had a girl that I was working with, and she said to me that one of her clients had said, whenever you call, I have to pick up the phone, and I have to pick it up because I don't know whether it's going to be one of three things, whether you're calling to give me some information that's going to help my business, whether you're calling to give me some free tickets or something to some amazing event,
nice,
or whether you're calling to sell me something. And because I don't know which it is, I need to answer that phone. And so
that's great.
It's really important, that you do the right thing, and it's about, giving shows you that you care.
Yeah.
And people, there was a LinkedIn article, it was a research piece years ago, and it spoke about that clients are 5 times more likely to engage with a sales professional who has either given information that's generic or targeted to their business.
Yes.
And that puts you so far ahead. 5 times more likely to want to deal with you.
Yeah.
And of course, because they know that you're not there just to take from them. You're there to help.
It's that personalised touch. It's funny you mentioned that because my mentor recently mentioned that, really personalising that approach for the individual so they don't just feel like they're another number in your, your sales funnel, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, totally. And because to me, I always say the 3 most important things in media and advertising are relationships, relationships, relationships.
And where does brand fit in that? I have to ask.
Well, branding is absolutely very, very important.
Yeah.
But, it's from your relationships that you can actually help people grow their brand. It's from your relationships that people introduce you to the right people, the right opportunities start to open, because of the relationships that you create with people, because people then know that they can trust you, they know that you have integrity.
Huge.
And so, they want to use you.
One of your colleagues said that you constantly went into bat for your team, never asking for credit. What does leadership with integrity mean to you?
Leadership to me is about service. It's about supporting your team, and you're the person behind the scenes in a lot of way. I've always believed, especially with my teams, if somebody in my team makes a mistake, it's always my fault, because I'm the manager, I'm the leader, and I would if I had a boss come down on anybody, it was like, no, it's me. And when you do that sort of thing, people then realize that they can trust you, and then they want to support you, and they want to do the right thing by you. There's nothing worse. I've had bosses that will throw you under the bus at the drop of a hat.
Same.
And you lose all respect. You lose, you don't get the best out of people. I always find the best leaders are the people that actually really care. I had and you've got to make those decisions, and you've got to do the right things. I was only talking to someone yesterday, and who's about to take on a new role and become a leader. And I said to him, can I give you just a little word of advice? I said, one of the best things you can do as a leader going into a new business is people want to go in there, they want to make their mark, and they want to, and put my flag down on the ground and and it's like, no, it's not about that. One of the best things you can do is actually just go in there, and for the first couple of months, just listen and watch, see what's going on, understand how it's working now, and then what can we do to make it better afterwards. I always talk about, Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
Is universally regarded as one of the greatest leaders, in history.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a thing where someone had asked him and said, what makes you a great leader? And he said his leadership come from his father. His father was the chief of his tribe. And he said, then two things I learned from him was that when we came to meet and we sat down in a circle. There was no heads of the table. We were all equal and we were all one. And he said, and the second thing I learned was that the leader speaks last. And it's really powerful, because when you do that, you give everybody else the opportunity to have their say.
Yes.
You give them the opportunity to feel that they've been heard. And too many leaders will walk into the boardroom everywhere and go, okay, I've got this great idea, and this is what we're going to do. Now, I want your ideas. What do you think? And everybody else sits there and goes, oh, we just agree with what you think, because you're the boss. And it's not that. You take away that power from them. And if you often, some of their ideas are way better than yours.
Yeah, I've seen that with my own team.
And so it's like, oh, yes, we are going to do that. That's brilliant. And it's about empowering your team so that, it's like a band.
Yeah.
If you're not in sync, it sounds terrible.
Of course.
It's all about, that universe of one song. And my dad, who was quite a big musician, always said that, when you're cooking, because everybody's in sync, and it's just this flow.
So John, what does that leadership look like? So say we do have a board meeting. How would you, as a leader, step into that board meeting and let your team kind of lead, instead of you being the one to kind of, start up that conversation?
Well, it's always about questions and questioning, asking the right questions. They often say that you don't win the Nobel Prize from the answer, you win the Nobel Prize from the question.
Yeah.
So I would always lead with, this is our challenge, and I would ask for their input, their ideas, their questions. And, no answer is wrong or too stupid. And because often I've had situations where someone said something that's, you think, oh, that's dumb. But then from that, it's been it's like, oh, wait on, that's actually quite genius when I look at it in a different way. I never forget, I used to box a long time ago, and I remember I'd injured my my left arm, which is your jabbing arm and the arm you use the most.
Yeah.
And I was at the gym, and they had at our boxing gym, they also had a rugby league team that were training and working in there. And there was a lady in there who was one of the kind of physio specialists and stuff. And someone said, "Oh, you should ask her." And so I went up to her and I said, "Oh, I've got this problem with the arm. What do you think I should do?" And she said, "Oh, we'll just box the other way." And I went, "Oh, well, you don't know anything about boxing, do you?" And I went, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's great." And then a little while after, I thought, hang on, that's actually not a bad idea. And then I was kind of researching, and in those days there was hardly any switch hitters, and it really messes people up when you do. And there's more of them today. And for example, Terence Crawford, who is absolutely incredible at that.
Yeah.
When you can do that, it gives you an advantage over your opposition that it's just so different because you don't see it.
No.
It's just so rare. And so often I think it's about, innovation can come from anywhere. Sometimes a child or a kid will say something to me and you think, wow, that's so profound. My youngest daughter, I remember when she was really young, and I said to her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Yeah.
And she said, she just sat there and looked, and she goes, I would just want to be me.
Oh, shit.
And I went, whoa, that is really profound. I said, "Oh, that's awesome. Well, you just do that."
Yeah, and so young to have that, that thought already, because so many of us grow up trying to be like fit in or trying to be someone else. So that's powerful. And I wanted to go back. You mentioned earlier, your colleague mentioned how you normally will take the hit. Like if someone has done something wrong, like as a leader, you take that on board. I guess my question is, how do you, I want to use the word empower that team member to also learn the lesson along the way without them always just expecting you to take the hit every time they perhaps make a mistake or whatever the case may be?
There's two kind of things to that. I had a really great friend who said that whenever he went out to dinner with his wife, often you'll choose your meal and they'll choose theirs, and then it comes and you look at their meal and you think, I should have chose that. What did I do?
Always.
And he said he would always give his wife his meal if it was better and she wanted it. And I used to think, that's so dumb. She's not learning any lessons about how, the right thing to do and to choose. But what really happens is they then are thinking not just about themselves, they're thinking about you, because if they choose the wrong thing, they know that you're going to cop it. Yeah. And I often think that in that leadership role, don't get me wrong, I work on a baseball theory. Anyone can muck up once and you can do it a second time, but the third time it's like, strike three, you're out.
Yeah.
And, I had a boss one time that said to me, "I want you to make as many mistakes as you possibly can, but I only want you to make them once. Right. And I want you to learn from them and then move on, because, that's how we get better.
Yeah,
it's all about, make mistakes, learning, improving. But if you continually make that same mistake over and over again and you're not learning, well, then, there's a problem in there somewhere, and that's about working with them to go, okay, what aren't you getting? So I often find as a leader doing that, your team realizes that you're the one that's probably going to cop it.
Yeah.
And so I think there feels a responsibility, and so they actually try harder not to do that. I'm part Māori, and growing up in New Zealand, often you'll find in big Māori families, and, my dad was the youngest of 16, and one of my aunties had 19 kids.
Gosh, big families, hey?
Yeah,
sure.
It's massive. And what you'll find often is that the siblings will bring up the younger kids, and there's almost like an unwritten kind of thing that happens where the older sibling takes on that parent role of this younger sibling, and so they look at each other in a different way, and there's a different care factor.
Yeah.
And if that the older sibling gets in trouble, they know that they're going to cop it from their parents.
Yeah.
And that younger sibling knows it's going to cop it from his older sibling now, and so there's a whole different relationship dynamic that happens between the family and the brother, the sisters, and so I I love that because, whānau is a really important thing within Māori culture. And, and there is the whole tribe and leaders and chiefs and stuff. And so it's very supportive, and everybody's there to make sure that they're there to help and anything you need.
Yeah. It makes sense what you're saying. I really like that viewpoint as well because, so I think if you don't give someone the opportunity to learn from their lesson, they're just going to keep doing it. But the way you framed it, yeah, that's great. I want to just backtrack to brand, if that's okay, John. What would be like a branding mishap that you've seen happen? I'm very big on educating our clients and our audience on branding, the power of brand. Is there a mishap? You don't have to say who it is, but perhaps an example you could share with us where you just know that their brand kind of really let them down?
Oh, God.
I put you on the spot.
Branding is crucial and really important because it's a statement of who you are and what you're really, what you're really about. As far as branding goes from a client, that nothing springs to mind.
Maybe there's a great example you could share that worked well.
One of the things that I think about is the importance of branding, because you have that whole call to action branding, and you often get clients that I often find with marketing managers, the problem that we have with marketing, a lot of marketing managers is they'll come into a new company and they come in a new brand, and again, they want to make their mark and they've got to do it quickly. Branding's about time, and consistency, being disciplined around that, and making sure that you're focused with all the things that you do within that brand. And so they tend to do this kind of call to action. And so it's, we've got a call to action, and as soon as you stop advertising, it drops back down. And it's that kind of jagged graph of when you're on, it's up, and when you're down, it's off. Whereas branding is that slow burner that takes time. And over time, as your brand gets stronger and bigger and stronger, it actually outperforms call to action. And you look at the greatest brands, and I know Apple is always one of the first to jump into, you never see them talk about price.
No.
You never see it is always about connecting their why to the consumer's why. And once you do that, you have somebody for life.
Yeah.
And I often find it's funny. I had some people just say to me recently, I'm having challenges with clients where they're saying that I don't need to advertise because I've got more than enough work, and it's, I just don't need to advertise.
I get that a lot as well, yeah.
And, the reason you do need to do that is you need to brand. And just because you've got work now doesn't mean that you are going to have work later on.
No.
It's also great for your the people you work with, because it makes them proud of the business that they work in and where they are. It's important because if you're attracting new and people to join your firm, if they see your brand and they know what your brand's about, it can be really, it attracts, higher quality customers. It can also make your business more successful in the sense of, I had a client a long time ago that they were getting a lot of foot traffic. It was a lot of kind of cheap sells and things like that. And then when they kind of rebranded themselves to be a bit more premium, what happened was they still got the traffic. They actually made more money because the traffic wasn't as much, but the actual spend was higher. Yeah. So their business, it was more quality, exactly. Yes. So they started getting, their business actually started making more money. So, you shouldn't just brand when times are bad or good. It's an always on process. You need to be top of mind. Just because you're top of mind today doesn't mean you're top of mind tomorrow.
No, thank you, John. That's a wrap. Podcast done. No, I'm joking. No, I've experienced the same with Design Studio Post. We rebranded in October 23, and it was fascinating just watching how the team, obviously my team did it, everyone just kind of glued so much more, and it's just raised, I think, the entire caliber of everything in the sense that it aligns, and just the clients that we're working with. I call them elite operators, not side hustlers. Yeah. But yeah, it's just been an absolute game changer.
Yeah, it's really important. For me, again, being a Kiwi, one of the best brands in the world are the All Blacks.
Yes. Oh,
and,
definitely.
And their brand, one of the things that I love about them, there's an incredible book called Legacy by James Kerr. And really, I mean, it's about the All Blacks, but it's about leadership. And there's a couple of amazing examples in there where they talk about a no dickheads policy.
Yeah.
And they took that policy from the Sydney Swans. And to give you an example, at one stage, Aaron Smith, who was arguably the best halfback in the world, was caught doing something not so right, where he was caught cheating on his wife at an airport. And anyway, because he disrespected the brand of the All Blacks, they basically just dropped him. And then he had to work his way back to get into the All Blacks, because as far as their whole ethos is better people make better All Blacks. And what you do on the field is important, but what you do off the field is just as important.
Yeah.
There's a great story where it's called Sweeping the Sheds. And James it was after a game, and they're back in the sheds, and they're going through the wrap up of the game, and one of the players is talking about all the things that happened within the game. And then all of a sudden they get up and they start cleaning the rooms. And he said a 2-time World Rugby Player of the Year grabs the broom and starts sweeping the sheds. And he's like, why are you doing this? Obviously the cleaners at the stadium are going to come here and do that. And his answer was, we're the All Blacks. No job is too big or too small, and we do it ourselves.
Yeah, powerful.
And it's the same thing. I've always said that. I remember saying it to a boss one time, and he said, no, that's not correct. He said some jobs are too small for you to do. But for me, I like to show my teams that I lead that if I need to get down and get dirty, that, no job is too small or too underneath me to do, because I won't do something, I won't make you do something that I won't do myself. And I managed nightclubs and pubs way back in the day.
Yes,
and,
I saw on your bio. Yeah.
And, often you find the best managers are the people that have been at Glassy, that have been worked their way to the bar, and then the bar manager, and then the manager, because they understand.
Yeah.
Telling someone to go and clean spew up out of the toilet, unless you've done it, you don't know how horrible it is.
Definitely. John, music has been a constant thread in your life, from DJing and working, record labels to playing bass in your band today. What has music taught you?
I love music. Music's been a really important part of my life. That is a good question. Music has taught me. Music's taught me. Oh wow. I've gone all blank.
That's fine. Take your time. No rush.
Music's taught me about, especially when you play in a band, it's about playing your part.
Yeah.
And, I play a few different instruments. In the band that I'm playing in now, I play the bass. Now, what bass players do is they're kind of a bit of the glue within the band, in the sense that you're part of the rhythm section, but you also are a part of the melody of what's going on. It's the only instrument that kind of does both of those two things.
Okay.
But your job is to make everybody else look better and look good and sound better. And lots of times you don't even notice the bass.
No.
You will kind of notice it when it's not there more than when a really good bass player, you're in so sync with the drums, and you're part of that unit because you are the rhythm section. But it's about kind of sacrificing your ego
to be the support,
and to back up everybody else.
Wow. That's it's interesting. Like you say, when you haven't got that bass, you notice it, but when it's there, you kind of just take it for granted. Hey,
often you can barely hear it.
You've played over 60 different sports in your life. What's kept you so curious and committed to the movement? And has one sport taught you something surprisingly about yourself?
Yes, I love sport. The sport that's probably taught me the most would have been my boxing training. prior to that, like I said, it gave me a different kind of confidence. When I grew up in New Zealand, you know, I was just a Māori amongst a heap of other Māoris. And then when I came to Australia, it was really different in the sense that, and my mum and dad got divorced when I was young. And so my mum was like a single, she was Australian, she was a single white female. And so a lot of her friends were kind of single white females or bands and stuff. And so I always felt different. And I was always kind of, in lots of ways, ashamed of the colour of my skin. I always felt like I was kind of second best.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I came to Australia, they seem to be, like in New Zealand, when I came to Australia, they seemed to really, what I saw, because I was really young at the time, that they really didn't like Aboriginal people. They didn't like people who were different.
Yeah.
And I was really concerned at one stage and worried, and like, do they think that I'm that? And so, you know, you kind of keep your head down and stuff. But in New Zealand, Māoris don't put up with that.
No.
You don't. You know, there's a bit like white New Zealanders are called Pākehā, and like the difference between Pākehā and Māori is kind of nothing, you know. And so it was really interesting. It wasn't until I was kind of 21 and I went back home to New Zealand and I actually hung out with my dad and my whānau, and then I became proud of who I was and my culture. And but it was at that time too, around a similar time, that I'd done a few different martial arts. I was working in a pub, and this bouncer was just on the side of us, and these guys just king hit him, and he went down, and they all piled into him. And so one of the other barmen and I jumped the bar to go and help him. And I'd done a few different martial arts. I'd done judo and shizunburu and these things, and I had long hair at the time. Anyway, I jumped in there trying to help him and save him, and because I was so used to fighting at a distance and using my legs, this guy grabbed my hair and just dragged me around like I was a rag doll, and I couldn't do anything.
Oh my goodness.
And then I realised, you know what, I need to learn to use my hands. And so one of the guys that was one of the head doorman at the place was a boxer, and he was amazing, and he's an incredible person, and he taught me so much. But I remember going to the boxing gym, learning to box, and it gave me a confidence about my abilities. And you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not aggressive. I've never been a violent person, but it just, it gave me this kind of inner confidence that when I was out, it was like, I knew that I could look after myself and I could handle myself. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the greatest by any stretch of the imagination. I always have this, I have this theory called the Fonte factor. I had a friend, and his surname was Fonte, and he was one of like Perth's top models and was an amazingly good-looking boy, but he was a lethal weapon, and you had no idea. If you were going to front up to him, that you were about to get an ass whipping.
Surprised,
You're very surprised because you're like, what? You look like that and you can do that. So, you know, whenever I see people, I always look at them and think, oh.
You never know.
You never know. Just because you look like that doesn't mean that you can't kick my ass. But I often found, you know, some of the boxers that we had in our gym, some of them were a lot of kind of street kids and in trouble and were often fighting all the time. But once you get into it and you're doing it all the time, you have a respect for it, and you also have this kind of understanding that you don't need to prove yourself. Yeah. I never forget, I was in a bar one time. I'd come back from Europe, and I caught up with a friend, and she was this, I hadn't seen her for ages, and she was this really beautiful, 6 foot tall, kind of young Jerry Hall looking girl. Anyway, we're sitting in the bar, it was at the Super Hotel, and we're chatting, and this guy walks up to me and says, what did he say to me? He goes, "You've got no culture." Oh. And I looked at him and said, "What?" And he goes, "You've got no culture." And I said, "Whatever, mate." Yeah. And then he walked away. 20 minutes later, he comes back up to me and he says, "You're an Anglo-Saxon trash can." And I looked at him and I said, "Mate, you need to go away." Yeah, and he went away. He came back a third time. Gosh. And he said the same thing. He goes, "You're an Anglo-Saxon trash can." And I looked at him and I thought, touch me, please, just touch me. And I'm going to wipe you all over this bar and I'm going to look good doing it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I thought, you know what? I don't know who this guy is. If he was to walk out that front door and a car went bang and hit him and squashed him, and it would be just a story. I would have gone to people going, oh my God, I saw this guy the other night and he walked out the front and got hit by this car. And I said, so I don't care whether you're alive or dead. So what do I care what your thoughts are and what you think and what you're saying? And a lot of that power came from, I didn't need to prove myself.
Yeah, it's powerful. I know we were chatting before the show, and I find running has done the same for me. It's just built this like resilience and inner confidence that I did a bit of boxing for a while. Then my fist started getting sore, probably my anger management, but never mind. But yeah, it's just running's just giving me this resilience and confidence like no other.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I always love that Mike Tyson quote that, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the head.
Yeah, 100%. Don, you've mentioned you're a qualified breathwork coach and have fasted for 24 days. What pulled you into these deeper wellness practices, and how have they changed your relationship with your body and mind?
I've always kind of been into health, wellness. And then I remember when I was about to turn 40, and I never freaked out at turning any age, but I freaked out at turning 40 because I had kids quite late, and I remember thinking, wow, when my daughter turns 40, I'm going to be nearly 80. And, the first 40 years go fast, but apparently the next 40 years goes even faster.
Yeah.
And so that really freaked me out. And I had this goal that I wanted to be fitter and healthier. It actually started at 30. I wanted to be fitter and healthier at 30 than I was at 20, which I was. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to be healthier and fitter at 40 than I was at 30. And then that was a big goal, and I did that. And then my goal was to be healthier and fitter at 50 than I was at 40.
Yeah.
And again, I achieved that. And I achieved those things through my constant learning and understanding about the body and longevity and how I could, all the different things that I could improve. And like, it's interesting, the different decades, I jump into different things, whether it was fasting and breath work, whether it's cold plunge and sauna and
I love all that.
and energy work and all of those kind of things. Meditation, of course, yoga. I've done yoga for a very long time. So it's always been about, what's that saying? You don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you said about the different decades thing, because I turned 40 in January. It's the first birthday I've actually dreaded. Like usually, my 30th, I partied for a year. I had it like planned 2 years before. But turning 40, there's some sort of shift, I guess, that happens. You say you were the same?
Yeah. I have this theory that you're always young.
Yeah, I love that.
Because like in 5 years' time, you're going to look back at 40 and go, oh my God, I wish I was 40. And, and you probably have the same thing when you turn 30 and you think, oh my God, I'm turning 30. How good would it be to be turning 30 right now?
Yes, that's very true. Because I was like, I'm 10 years from, I'm sort of 40 now. 30s was 10 years away, and I'm like 10 years away from 50. It's a bit of a like reality check, I guess. Hey.
Yeah, it totally is. But like I said, you're always young because, in 5 years' time, you're going to wish that you were the age that you were now.
Completely. I actually saw a reel yesterday. I shared it on the podcast. It was this old lady. She's 95, but she's become like some sort of champion weightlifter in her age bracket. But she's so strong. 95. Her name's, I don't know, Meryl or whatever it was. And she's like lifting these weights, 95. I was like, that's inspirational. I think the quote that they had, like, you're never too old to try something new. But she's just like amazing, just going for it, just
it's amazing what people can do.
And your mind. Oh.
Yeah, and the mind, definitely. I always talk about, if you compare us to humans, to many of the animals, we're not the fastest swimmers, we're not the fastest runners, we're not the best climbers, but for the best utility player, we beat most animals because we can do so many things that they can't. Fish can't climb, monkeys aren't great swimmers, but if there was a decathlon, we'd probably win it because of the point system.
Yeah, Definitely. John, you've walked through your cancer journey. What are some of the unexpected gifts it gave, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually?
Yeah, I always say, you grow through what you go through. That there's always lessons and there's always gifts in everything that you go through. I think real power comes from vulnerability and from, through that kind of learning, growth, through struggle. Struggle's really important and a really important thing in your life. I actually said to a friend a while ago, we were talking about kids and stuff, and I said, I want my kids to struggle. And they were kind of taken aback by that.
Yeah.
And I said, no, struggles are a really great thing because, often it's the depths of your struggles that define the height of your success.
Completely.
And so I always talk that story of the old man and the butterfly.
I haven't heard it. No, please share.
So there's an old man, he's sitting on a bench, and there's a chrysalis that's just next to him on this tree, and there's this butterfly, and it's slowly breaking out of this chrysalis. And he can see it tearing, and it's taking its time, and he's watching, and he thinks, you know what, I'll help it. And so he tears it open just a little bit to help the butterfly come out. And he's sitting there watching it. And then what happens is that this butterfly kind of comes out, and its body's big, and it's a bit munted, and its wings are all withered, and
Yes,
he didn't realize that actually by helping that butterfly, he stopped it being able to struggle, and that struggle is actually what pushes all the fluid to its wings and helps it grow and fly. And we were talking earlier that I said to you that often I find it's the opposite in life that give you what you want. And, if you want wisdom and knowledge, it's about solving problems and overcoming challenges. And if you want to be resilient and strong, it's about overcoming those really difficult situations and challenges in your life that gives you that. I talk about in yoga, if you actually want to bend down and touch the ground, people think, I've got to bend down, but it's not. It's about lifting up that then makes your body go down.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you let people struggle to a degree and stand on the sidelines and encourage and support for sure. But a lot of times they just want to listen. I talk about a difference between a lion in the zoo and a lion in the wild.
Yeah.
They're two completely different animals. If your job as a parent is to give your kids the skills and the knowledge and the wisdom so that when they go out into the world, they can look after themselves.
Yeah.
You let that lion from the zoo out into the wild and it's dead within a couple of weeks. So it's really important that you embrace the struggle and you realize there's going to be a gift that's going to come from that, and you're going to learn something. Through my journey right now, I learned the gifts that I have got from having cancer is I value time so much more. I remember when I was living in Europe and I was in the UK, and I was about to leave, and I was like 6 weeks before I was about to leave. And I did more in those 6 weeks than I did in 6 months because there was a time limit on what was going on. And so, I've got to do this, I've got to go and see this. And, it made me value people and value my relationships with family. It made me realize too the gifts of care in strangers. Sometimes the greatest gifts can come from people that you don't even know.
So true.
And I'll give you an example. There's an absolutely wonderful lady recently who was a friend of a friend, and he was talking to her about me, and then she contacted me and said, she has this, it's a far infrared machine called an Onzeki machine, and it's supposed to do all sorts of different healing and as far as cancers and all sorts of different things. And she said, I want you to come and see me. And so I was like, so I didn't really know her. And I went and saw her, and she used the machine on me. And then she said, here, I want you to take this home and I want you to use it on it. And I've had it for months.
Wow.
And I said to her, what do I owe you? What's the cost?
Yes.
And she said, I know, all I want from you is to be well.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God,
wow.
that is so beautiful.
So kind,
and you don't realize how many people are out there like that. And often when you share your stories and you are honest and you're vulnerable and you do those kind of things, it comes back tenfold because you can see that people are all going through that sort of stuff too.
Yeah.
And, and it's about that, not comparing your shit to somebody else's. Yeah. It's like, well, my shit's bigger, it's stinkier or whatever. It's like everybody's got their shit.
They do.
And, what you need to do is just stick a fork in it, turn it over and see what grows because, the most beautiful flowers, the most delicious vegetables and fruit grow from the most horrible shit. And so,
great point.
Look for that growth. It's coming. There's a gift in there somewhere. You might not see it at the moment, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, and I think you've also highlighted something really important about just that act of kindness and how a stranger can completely change your entire life. And, I went through quite a turbulent time 3 years ago and, met certain people along that way. One in particular who's just given me the tools to completely change my life. And I often think, oh my gosh, if I hadn't met this person, like who would Tracy pretend? Well, I mean, I put in the hard work, but it's like, if, those certain encounters, if it hadn't happened, like where would I potentially be, It's just amazing that simple act of kindness, reaching out to someone, LinkedIn message or a message or, you don't know someone from bar of soap, but just that one message impacted my entire life. And, it's now 3.5 years down the track and I've really gotten to know this person really well. And it's just changed my entire life, right? So it's so powerful to not underestimate that kindness.
I do believe you do get what you need. There's no coincidences and the whole sliding doors but that was always going to happen for you.
Yeah.
And the proof is that it has happened, so you know that it was. But if it didn't happen that way, it was going to happen another way because, we get what we need if we're open and there's signs all the time. They're all around you. And sometimes they'll hit you really hard because you're just not listening.
Yeah.
And I always say that there's a physical, mental, spiritual plane and, and they're all really, really important and, none are greater than the other, but of those planes, the physical plane is probably the kind of the lowest of that plane. And when you're not listening to yourself or things aren't happening or doing, then suddenly something's inflicted on you and it's like, you can be in a room and everybody's sick and you don't get it. Yeah. Or you can be in a room and someone sneezes, 30 meters away from you, you come down with it and it's like, it's because you need that lesson and whether that's to slow down, take a look at your life, what's going on. And, I do believe with what I'm going through now, that's exactly what has happened. There was times where I was working and I would be at work before my kids got up. I would be at home as they were going to bed or they'd been to bed. And I always used to think, you say you're doing this for your kids, you're trying to provide this better life. But if you're not seeing them, are you really?
Yeah.
And so when this first happened to me, I'll never forget, I was in 21, it was for 4 days before Christmas that I had my diagnosis. And I remember walking over to the park across the road from my house and the trees looked a different color. Yeah. The wind felt different. The sky looked different. And there was a couple of times in my life where I thought, I need to change my life. And I remember when I was working in the record industry and, I say there's busy and then there's Sony busy because it's a whole new level of craziness. And, whenever there's an artist in town, you'd have to go out to the gig, you'd have to wait, go backstage and to show them that the record company's there and we're supporting you. And I remember I was at this gig and a friend said to me, when's your baby due? And I said, a couple of months. And he said, wow, you can be busy when that baby comes. And I thought, I'm never going to see it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kind of grew up without a father, for a big chunk of my life. And I thought, I do not want my daughter to know what that is like.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I need to change my life. And I loved what I was doing. But I went, universe, I need to change my life. And it was really interesting because a few weeks after that, I had a random call out of the blue from a guy that had asked me a couple of times to come and work. And I said to him, well, it all comes down to the security and the money.
Yeah.
You've got both of those things. and he phoned me and said, I've got them for you.
Great.
And then, you know, my life went on a different tangent. And the same thing happened with this, because I started to realize that, you know, money's important, but it's not the most important thing. I'll never forget, I'd gone to a lecture from an Indian guru, Babaji, who'd come over, and someone in the audience had said, asked him the question and said, who would you rather teach, a rich person or a poor person?
Yeah.
And instantly, without thinking, he said, a rich person. And he said, because rich people understand that money doesn't make you happy. And it's a really difficult concept for poor people to get their heads around.
It's going to make them happy.
And so I realized, I think if you find as you get older, you realize that it's about quality of life. And so one of the things I love my job as in West Media, but one of the great things that I have is I was able to negotiate. And I always say, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate.
Yeah.
And I was able to negotiate working Monday to Thursday, 9 till 3, so that I could take my kids to school, I could pick them up, I could help them with their homework, I help them with their music, I coach their sporting teams. Now, prior to that, I was so locked into, you know, that corporate world and working and feeling guilty if you weren't at work, and working on weekends, and it really reprioritized what's important. And, you know, I'm so much happier now than I ever was in any of those.
Yeah, and being more present as well, I guess, with your family.
Yeah, totally. You know, that's super important. You know, there's only one time, and that's now.
John, I think a lot of business owners, we tend to put our health on the back burner. What would your advice be to someone who deep down knows they haven't gone for checkup, they've just been grinding away at work, you know, working long hours? What would your advice be to them?
Your health is, you know, everybody says this, my health is the most important thing. And until you are unwell, you suddenly realize that it is. I remember meeting a guy once who was a multi like millionaire. I think he was in the 20s, kind of millionaire. And this was back in the day. And he had a respirator and had really bad emphysema and could barely breathe. And I remember him saying, I'd give up all of my money just to be able to breathe.
Yeah, wow.
And, you know, you don't realize how important those kind of things are. I would say, especially to every guy out there, make sure you go and get your PSA levels checked.
Yeah.
You know, I had no idea. I was playing a lot of sport. I was really fit. But even now, you know, I'm doing a whole bunch of different modalities. And even last night I was at my acupuncturist because I'm going through radiotherapy and hormone blockers, and I'm just trying to make sure that my immune system, my energy is right. And he says, Mel, you know, you're so healthy. You look so healthy, and I feel so healthy. You know, I feel outstanding, honestly. But if I would have no idea that this is going on and growing in my body at this moment. So I can't implore people enough to make sure that you go and do those checks, you do those regular blood tests. I tend to do on my birthday. I've always been interested in those kind of things. So around my birthday, it's a marker that every year I need to get a blood test just to see where I'm at, what's going on, what my levels are. And
it's a good reminder as well. Hey,
you know, if you anchor it to something, it makes it easier to do. But it's so important, you know, on your deathbed. As everyone says, you know, we're thinking, I wish I spent more time working at the office. You know, it's quality of life, your family, your friends and stuff become the most important things. It's funny, I was briefly in the Navy, and I remember we were doing a fire simulation. So they have this ship that's basically on fire and flooding.
Yeah.
And you've got to make your way in, and you climb up these stairs and water's pouring all over you, and you've got a gas tank and a mask on, and you go in a pair, and you honestly can't see your hand like an inch in front of your face.
Yeah.
And you're meant to, we're told that you're meant to search the room from left to right, so that, you know, that's the way other people come in to find, if things are wrong, that's how they're going to find you. So we get in there, couldn't find the left hand wall, and we find the right hand. So we start going around that way. And as I'm in there, I see this flash and there's this fire and it's all around there. And I'm with one of the other guys and I'm like, oh my God, we're in the wrong room. And you know when they talk about your life flashing before your eyes? It was really interesting because my life flashed before my eyes. And the thing that stood out for me was not the things I'd done, or it was the people that I were going to miss and the things that I hadn't done.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. And as dumb as this is, one of the things that I hadn't done is I'd been to see Hunters and Collectors like 3 times, and every time, and I was young and do dumb things, and you drink heaps before you, because it was expensive to get at the clubs and pubs, so you drink before you go.
Yeah, of course.
And 3 times I got so wasted that I never got to see the band. And so after that experience, one of the things that I hunted down and did was like, I need to go and see them. And so that was one of the things I did. And so like I said, you know, in life, I used to have this question that I used to ask lots of people. When I was living in London, I was 25 and I was working at the spa, and, you know, you're just doing anything, working everywhere, traveling. And we had one of the guys that owned the bar, he was turning 32. And I said to him, if you could go back to talk to you at 25, you know, what would you say to you?
Yeah.
And he said to me, there's 3 guys that owned the club and the restaurant. And it was a really good partnership. Actually, he kind of ran the bar. He had one of the guys was a lawyer who had heaps of money, and he would bring all of his rich lawyer buddies to the bar. And Will knew heaps of models and beautiful girls. So he would have them at the bar. And then one of the guys was well up in the restaurant industry, and so he ran the restaurants. And he said to me, don't invest in property. He said, it takes 16 months to make any money. He said, invest in friends. He said, because if you find the right group of people, he said, they will make you money. And he said, and follow your passion. Yeah. So I was really interested just in that question. So for lots of times I would often ask that question to all sorts of different people that I'd meet. And I remember I asked it to when I was writing for a Street Press magazine, and I asked my boss then, and he said, learn to say no. I had another boss that I'd asked the same question, and he'd said, oh, you know, you're never too old. And he said, and what I mean by that, he said, when I was 35, I thought, I wish I'd learned to play the piano because his mum was musical. And he said, but it's too late now. He said, and then I turned 45, and I thought, if I'd have started when I was 35, I think I can do it now. And but now, you know, I'm at 45, it's too late. I'm too old. And he said, then I turned 55. And he said, and I realized it's never too late to start anything, because you're always going to age.
Of course.
And, you know, so you're always young. And I love that. And I remember there was an old guy, I was running up and down Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
And this old guy was standing there looking at Perth, and I stopped, and I'm a real chatter. I'd say everybody and anybody. And so I started saying to him, and I remember asking him that question, and he said to me, he'd come over to Perth because his mother had grown up in Perth, and I think he lived in Adelaide, and he said that, I think it was in his early 80s, and he said he was gearing down because he wasn't going to be able to drive anymore, or wasn't going to be able to travel. And he said, I just wanted to see, you know, where my mum had grown up and different things. And I asked him that question, and he said, don't get married. And I was like, oh. And he said, I don't mean that in our way. He said, find the right person. He said, absolutely. He said, but when you get married, you give up half your life to live half of somebody else's. And he said, and when you're my age now, you don't regret the things you do. You regret the things you haven't done.
Yeah. Well,
so I find that
interesting. Yeah. So John, what would be your advice to your 25-year-old self?
I know people ask me that. It's so hard because I've had so many of other people. Oh, that's great. So it's hard not to steal other people's, but I would say probably my daughter's advice. Be you.
Yeah.
Be authentically you. Be vulnerable, because like I said, there's real power and real strength in that. And I give you the example when so my condition, when it happened to me, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And at the same time, I was diagnosed with another rare disease called achalasia.
Yeah.
And so what that is at the top of your stomach and at the bottom of your esophagus, you have a lower esophageal sphincter. And so the nerves in that, basically when you eat food, it opens and food goes into your stomach and then it closes to stop the acid coming out. So what had happened was that the nerves within my esophagus stopped working and it just closed. So when I ate, food would just get stuck at the top of my esophagus and would sit there, and then basically I would throw it back up. And so I was on average kind of throwing up between 7 and 9 times a day.
Wow.
And my record was 22 times.
In one day?
In one day.
Oh, gosh.
And so I had my prostate operation and I had the robotic surgery and I had it removed. And so I've got 6 holes in my stomach. I've got the achalasia and I'm constantly throwing up. And as you can imagine, it's quite painful.
Well,
I mean, throwing up is horrible at the best of times.
Yes.
But, when you had a major operation and stitches, and it was quite challenging. And,
double whammy.
And I remember, I went from 86 kilos down to 67.
And you're so tall as well.
Yeah, and so I looked like I was a prisoner of war. I was like a skeleton. I remember I was trying all sorts of different things to try and get the food to go down, and went Ayurvedic, and I had a dietitian come, and I remember I said to her, she said, "Oh, can I have a look at this by the top of my chest and body?" And I said, "Oh, I can take my shirt off." I took my shirt off, and then she looked at me and she went, "Oh my God." I was like, "Oh, what?" She goes, "Well, those bones aren't meant to be showing."
Yeah.
And so, and then later on, I got told, I need to be really careful because you could lose your teeth. And I'm like, what? From throwing all the time. And I was like, oh, God. And I remember, so after my operation, I remember coming home and you've got a catheter and I had it taken out. And so when you come back, there's no control. And I remember my doctor saying to me, we need to first cure the cancer, and then work on incontinence, and then erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And I said to him, wait, I think we might have them in the wrong order. Let's look at erectile dysfunction first, then the cancer, and then the
change the order.
Incontinence.
Yeah.
But I must admit, know what I know now, he definitely had them the right order. Yeah. The incontinence is it's such a difficult and hard thing. And my heart goes out to all the mothers out there that have kids. And I understand, what that's like. And I remember coming back from the hospital, I had the catheter taken out. And basically, if I coughed, I wet myself. If I stood up from sitting down, I wet myself. And I can remember sitting in the bedroom this night and I was just so down. And because the other thing that was difficult was because of the achalasia, when I was sleeping, I couldn't actually lie down. I had to kind of be in an upright position.
Almost seated somewhere.
Yeah, kind of halfway between sitting up and halfway between lying down. Because if I laid down, sometimes I'd get this acid thing and it would come up and I'd wake up and I'd be choking.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember sitting on my bed in the dark, crying like a little baby, thinking, I cannot live like this.
No.
And I phoned a friend who, I don't know if you know Dr. Karl Krasniewski.
I've heard the name, yes.
He's like him. He's the smartest person I know. He's one of these incredible people that, he was just a state rower and a black belt and the world's leading authority on Swaziland and an anthropologist and, and it builds these incredible health by himself and hand. And anyway, he's incredible. And so I phoned him up and I remember talking to him and he said to me, you just need to set a really small goal and achieve it, and then set another really small goal and achieve it. And he said, and you keep doing that, and then what happens is it creates momentum, and then it creates the change. And it was so powerful. And I often talk when I am doing some of my mentoring or coaching, I often talk about that because people want to see these big changes and they think I've got to make these drastic, massive changes. And it's not about that. It's about, taking small steps.
Yes.
And it's the whole thing of how do you eat an elephant? Step one bite at a time. And I give the example of, if you want to get to the top of the Empire State Building, you've only got to take a step that's, 10, 15 centimeters high. But you just need to do it 1,578 times.
Yeah.
Once you do that, you get to the top of the Empire State Building. And so it's really important. And I talk about, discipline, focus, and consistency. If you can do those three things, you'll be successful in anything that you put your mind to in life.
Yeah.
But, often that's a difficult thing. I say, everybody says, I want to be healthy and have a great looking body. And I say, it's easy. You only got to do two things. Just got to eat the right food and do the right exercise. But how hard is it to eat the right food and do the right exercise?
It is so hard. Oh, I've lost 22 kilos and it's just so hard. And I think I just reached a point where I was like, no, I need to get rid of my excuses. Because I would save gym for the end of the day. I'd justify all these horrible takeaways. And it's been a 2.5 year journey, but it's been hard. And it's just constantly showing up every single day. Like you said, that consistency. My mentor told me about focus and just every single day, just going for it. You literally have to, because you can achieve things that you never ever thought were possible.
Absolutely. And then to my final point with that, especially with what I was going through, I decided to be really vulnerable. And, a lot of this came from the whole Brene Brown stuff. I like
love her work.
Her work. And I remember the incontinence. I thought, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. It just is what it is. And so I told people. And like you said, I'm pretty much an open book. I care to a degree.
Yeah.
And I never forget, I was a really good friend of mine, and we were chatting one day, and he said, he goes, if you do that, I'm going to tell everybody about, your incontinence. And I went, go ahead. I said, I have no problems. I've already told everybody. It's, and so that's what I mean, where you get your power. Because if I was afraid of that and I didn't want anybody to know and I was sitting there hiding behind it, all my power is taken away. Somebody finds out, I'm going to be devastated and be crushed.
Yeah.
But because I just embraced it and I owned it, it wasn't a problem. And if people have got a problem with it, that's their problem, not mine.
Yeah, definitely. John, I think I said it to you before the show, but I firmly believe that by you, voicing what you've gone through and your experience, you're actually giving others that same permission to speak about what they're going through and knowing that they're not alone. So yeah, I just want to celebrate you. I think you're absolutely an incredible human. You're so brave. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing for not only the people, but people around the world, because a lot of your messages are really important. And I'm truly grateful and honoured to be a small part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This was something that was completely out of my comfort zone. I still get a sweaty mo every now and then. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.